Well, welcome to the podcast, everyone. I'm Marcy Markusa, and today we're talking about hockey pride and zoning concerns if you live here in the city of Winnipeg. This is Manitoba. So the hockey pride relates to the Four Nations Cup, and that is Canada's 3-2 overtime win over the United States in that final game. However, we're going to hear from 5 guys from Winnipeg who made the trip down to Boston to celebrate their friend who's on Team Canada. First, though, we begin with a bit of a complicated story that has to do with where you live, if you live in the city of Winnipeg, as I do. Now, Winnipeg's Executive Policy Committee voted in favor of federal funding for the North End Sewage Treatment Plant. And they need that funding because the plant's been in need of upgrades for more than 2 decades. But it's complicated. So this funding for the sewage treatment plant comes from the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund. But to qualify for it, the city had to make some zoning bylaw changes that would make it easier to build high-density housing. Effectively, what the feds have said is they've tied the Housing Accelerator Fund to the funding needed for the North End treatment plant. If the city doesn't make the changes, we risk losing the cash that we need for the sewage treatment plant. It's $150 million to make these upgrades. Now, not everyone at City Hall is convinced. I asked Mayor Scott Gillingham what he would say to councillors who aren't so sure that we should say yes to the requirements the feds have put forward.
I would say get on board. We can't risk the $150 million that has been put on the table by the federal government.
But if they're not on board because they're worried about zoning, do they have a legitimate concern about that? If we just say yes, yes, yes very quickly, we're going to lose some of that ability to have a made in Winnipeg solution. We're going to have increased density in places where maybe neighborhoods or Winnipeggers don't want it.
Yeah, so we're not saying yes, yes, yes quickly. This has been an ongoing and continues to be an ongoing back and forth dialogue with the province, or with the federal government and CMHC. There is a hearing coming up, and a hearing is, a public hearing where the public can have input, and we're trying to find ways that will satisfy, as many councillors as possible, and mitigate some of the concerns that some councillors have, and some of the concerns that I have as well.
So Brian Mays is a city councillor for St. Vital, and he would not like this frame that he was against this, but he did have a lot of concerns about it. I spoke to him yesterday about this after the show.
Good morning.
So how are you feeling about the EPC voting now? It's past that level now in favor of receiving this funding. You were one of the councillors that was worried about density and zoning, right?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, it's complicated. It's 2 different housing programs from the federal government sort of now intertwined. That's actually, I requested that, but let's just have one vote on the rezoning. Let's do it in June. So I'm fine with that part. It is important to say it's an application for $150 million that would start paying in 2026 and go till 2030, I think. So this is far from securing funding. This is far from, like, if you vote no, you've forfeited $150 million. I mean, to say that councils are putting it at risk, the federal election is going to put it at risk. I mean, let's be blunt about what the $150 million is. It's an application. So I anticipate supporting this at council because the mayor's right. We should have a public hearing on the rezoning, but it's scheduled for June, and we'll have all of this out at that point.
So obviously, when it comes to the money we're talking about to get the North End sewage treatment plant upgraded, the upgrades have been needed for 22 years. So this is clearly not lost on you.
I don't know if anyone's worked harder on this than I have, except Mayor has certainly gone to bat trying to get federal funding. The other complexity here, I mean, Councillor Orlico and I certainly had questions about Indigenous consultation, federal requirements, environmental assessment, federal requirements. The staff have gotten back to us on that. We are agreeing to freeze development charges for 3 years if we do this. So people can, that means higher taxes for you and me because the developers aren't going to be paying in anything as they develop this new housing. So this does come at a cost, but at least the rezoning debate we can hear from the public starting in March and then have the public hearing in June.
So you initially, if people have been following this complicated story, you actually did a Freedom of Information request. You FIPA'd for more information about the Housing Accelerator Fund. What did you find out that has made you maybe less concerned? Because I understand that you feel a little bit more comfortable. You did get some information.
Yeah, I got 52 pages, found a mistake on page 51, and they then gave me 350 pages. So I got some disclosure. I was pleased with that. 2 things, really. the staff are now agreeing we can go ahead with a hearing in June. They said that publicly. So there had been some maneuvering to try and get the hearing moved earlier, but we're going to go ahead have this hearing on the fourplexes, the rezoning, in June. And I mean, I do think the other piece of information that came out is we've already surpassed as a city the target for what they were calling the missing middle section of housing, buildings with 2 to 4 units. We've already exceeded what we wanted to do in the 3-year program. We're 13 months in, we're already 10% over. So if somebody stands up and says, oh my God, we have to do this fourplex stuff to meet our target for buildings with 2 to 4 units, that's just not true. We're only doing it now to get money, and we're not sure we're going to get money because, well, frankly, there's a looming federal election.
So just so people can understand and follow what we're talking about here and what you're saying, if I understand it correctly.
It's complicated.
Yeah, but once we get to those public hearings, for people that might be worried, this is at the citizen level, you look around your neighborhood and you might think, maybe densities may be a concern of yours. And if it is, and then we have these public hearings and the justification is, we need to build more of these 2 to 4 fourplexes. The reality is we already have enough of those on the books to satisfy getting these funding from the feds. So that's not going to be an argument that can go forward because you FIPA'd this information and it shows we've already built all of those units to their standard or their requirement, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, that's now public. The staff are putting that out every month, so we're ahead of the target. So it will, I mean, if we've had a federal election in May or earlier, that will be important information to know in June, but I would encourage people to come out to the information meetings in March, come out to the public hearing in June. I certainly haven't said no fourplexes anywhere. I put out a discussion paper on this. There are certain lots where we should do that, but we probably shouldn't do it where you have a gravel lane, for example. That's not a great place to quadruple the population. Well, the staff seem to have agreed with that. So the mayor's saying, staff are trying to listen, trying to mitigate. I think, speaking personally, there is some of that going on. But big hearing to come in June, and we'll be going public with a plan in late February or early March, and I certainly want to hear from the public.
Do we know yet? Part of what your previous concerns were also around geography. Like knowing exactly where these housing units were going to be built in the city of Winnipeg specifically. Do you have enough specifics now?
I think we're getting close. I could bore you with all sorts of details about. I mean, the height limit seems to be coming down that the staff are proposing. The lot width, I mean, my discussion paper said, well, you should need 66 feet of lot width if you don't have a back lane. The staff have come pretty close to that. I'm trying to work with them on that. So lots of detail. It wouldn't just be this isn't just about downtown or the older parts of the city. This is citywide stuff, and it's probably the biggest rezoning in the history of the city. So people should get involved. People should give us their opinions. I was on one of these shows and somebody said, well, you're just against any rezoning. All you want is single family. Not at all. Not at all. I'm the one who put out a discussion paper with some ideas. So
you're just trying to slow it down a little bit and not
trying to put it where it'll be, I'm aware this has side effects. I've lived through that in the Glenwood area. So let's try and think it through at the front end and not just, it's easy to shout, we got to build up, not out, but the devil is in the details here.
So for Winnipeggers that are going to watch the upcoming vote, when council looks at this, and you said you'll vote yes to the funding coming from the feds, at least for the North End Sewage Treatment Plant, that's because you even though there's some contingency in tying together these two funds, because of the public hearing, it doesn't mean that we've said yes to everything the feds want for zoning requirements for that. There's a way to have both things.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, we're voting to apply for money from the feds, money that wouldn't flow until 2026, money that was promised in the Fed fall economic statement that, of course, didn't get passed due to the prorogue of Parliament. So, yeah, I anticipate voting yes to that part, but then there'll be a long run yet to get to June and the hearing on the fourplexes. And
we'll see what the public says then. All right. Thank you very much, Bryan Mays. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I know it's a complicated issue, but speaking personally, it is important to hear from the public on this. I do think it's the biggest rezoning in the city's history. So thanks for having me on.
Brian Mays is the city councillor for St. Vital. By the way, if you are confused still, because it's quite a complicated story, remember that public hearing is coming up later in 2025, and you can always directly reach out to any of your city councillors. I'm Marcy Markusa. You're listening to This is Manitoba on the podcast, and let's get proud and loud next, shall we? It was quite a hockey game. Canada winning the Four Nations face-off in overtime against the U.S. 3-2. A group of friends from Winnipeg, as I mentioned, were in Boston to watch all of this. They headed down to cheer on their friend Seth Jarvis, who was playing right wing for Team Canada. They even made it onto national television. So before we touch base with them to hear how they felt about the win, here's a bit of an interview that was on Sportsnet between periods.
Back in Boston with the road trippers from Winnipeg, Seth Jarvis's buddies, Lucas, Bryan, and Sloan. So, Lucas, take us through the last few days. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a roller coaster. We were supposed to fly out on Sunday. That got canceled, rescheduled a couple times. 2 days ago, we decided, hey, we're driving out. We're going to get to this game no matter what. We got to support our country, and more importantly, we got to support one of our best buddies. So we drove out here, and it's worth every minute of it.
Beautiful. You're in a hostile environment up here, but you guys are doing an excellent job. Congrats on making it out here. Just terrific. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Chris.
You know, Seth's known to be quite a character, and he's got to come quite honestly, hanging out with those guys.
That's incredible. That's a great story. It's so Canadian.
So loud in there. I don't know if you made it out. They were just talking about how Canadian that was, that moment with those Winnipeg guys last night. The group of Winnipeggers road trip to Boston to cheer on their friend Seth Jarvis in the big game. Now, Bryan Hanna was one of those 5 guys, and we just reached him at 8. Bryan Hanna?
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going for you? I heard you're furiously packing after what must have been an amazing night. What was it like down there last night? What did it feel like?
It was electric. It was so cool. It was so much fun, you know, having it end that way. It made the whole trip worth it. So, yeah, I don't even know what to say. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity getting to see all the Canadian fans down here, roaming the streets and stuff. It was awesome.
What was the biggest moment for you down there, you know, as a Winnipegger, as a Canadian? I mean, watching the TV, I couldn't tell if it was the goal or if it was the singing of the anthem. What for you was sort of the moment?
You know, I don't even know. The anthems were pretty cool. But obviously the overtime goal, like that's like the new golden goal, honestly. So it was pretty cool to be part of history and just to be able to say I was there and, you know, one day tell my kids that I was there. So that was the coolest part for sure.
Could you make out the change to the lyrics in the Canadian anthem when Chantal Kreviazuk was singing? It was so loud in there. I wondered if you actually understood what was happening in that moment.
Honestly, that's the first I heard of that. I couldn't hear a thing during that. Everything was so loud, like behind all the noise. I couldn't even tell what the anthem singers were saying. So that's the first I've heard of any lyric changes.
Did you get a chance at all to celebrate with any of the players? Obviously, you were there supporting Seth Jarvis.
Yeah.
Did you get to talk with him?
Yeah, after the game, we briefly got to see him and a few of the guys after. So it was super cool to meet, like, you know, your childhood heroes and especially our buddy too. Just so proud of him to have that moment and to let us be a part of it. So that was really cool and awesome for him to share that with us a little bit.
Who else did you meet?
Well, you know, we got to meet most of the guys. They had like a little friends and family thing after, so we got to share the moment with some of those guys. It was super cool. Like
McDavid, Crosby, like everybody in the room, kind of.
Yeah, all those guys. Honestly, all of them were there.
How did you handle that? Like, because did you try to keep it cool, or did you know?
Oh yeah.
Did you lean in for some selfies?
Like you know, like when you're in the family with all the family, you try to avoid asking for pictures. But you know, it was tempting at times, just trying to play it cool, act like we belonged there. So. But yeah, it was pretty awesome. You
guys kind of did us proud too, You made Winnipeg look styling because y'all like had really cool glasses on and the mustache nods. What was it like with your sort of, you know, between period interview? You were on Sportsnet last night.
You know, it kind of caught us off guard, but the comments have been kind of funny to look at. So I'm glad we're doing Winnipeg proud and hopefully the positive comments keep on coming.
What do you mean the comments have been funny? Can you give me an example what you mean?
There was one that was telling my buddy he needs a haircut, or a few saying, "Oh, like these Winnipeg boys look awesome. Would love to grab a drink with Winnipeg boys anytime." Like stuff like that. Just kind of funny to hear.
Obviously, politics played into last night. Was there tension there too? Could you feel any of that?
At points, but I feel like people were there to watch a hockey game, so it wasn't really about politics or anything for them. It was just about watching some good hockey and being a part of history. So all that was kind of pushed to the side, and if anything did get brought up, it was never taken too far.
Have you guys followed Seth? I don't know how deep your friendship is with Seth, where you first met him, or if you're following him to other big moments in his hockey career.
Well, I know, wherever he goes, I hope to keep being his friend. So, if there's other big moments along there and he wants us there to support him, we'll definitely be there and do whatever we can to get there. So, just been cool to be on this journey with him, How
far back do you go with him, Bryan?
Well, a bunch of us, all of us played our youth hockey with him. So, elementary school ages, known him since we were around 10. A few guys here more than others, known him since we were a lot younger. So it kind of just all ranges, but definitely all since the elementary school, younger ages.
What was the elementary school here in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I went to Montrose, but then he went to Starbuck with one of our other buddies, Lucas, out there, and he went to Tuxedo with, knew our buddy Sloan. So it just ranges.
Lots of little pockets then all over the place of people that would have been cheering and who would have known Seth and maybe played with him too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so you're furiously packing because you guys actually literally hit the road. And how many of you were there and how many hours did you drive to get there to be there last night?
There's actually 5 of us shoved in a little SUV. And we drove, it was a 29-hour trip to get here, all in total, driving through the night. So the way here was definitely going to be easier than the way home. So we gotta get on the road as soon as we can here.
All right. Well, I'll let you do that, Bryan. Thank you so much for telling us about your amazing night. I can't imagine that after party and the photos that you've got. If you've got one, you can share with us. Send it our way. And thank you so much for talking to CBC.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Bryan Hanna went to Boston to support his friend Seth Jarvis as he played for Team Canada in the Four Nations Cup final. By the way, big shout out also from Winnipeg on Team Canada to Mark Stone. Well, that's the end of our podcast for this morning. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and share.